She has a gift for translating our wild doodles into our OC vision. Yeah, no, I have to dig it up. I don't know if I still have it on my computer somewhere, but it's like, honestly, like a joke. Kind of like, I basically just horribly edited somebody else's art and like photoshopped some like some IRL clothes onto it, and literally just was like, I kind of want it to look like this, but with the hair of my old OC. And then just like snap of the fingers, she did it, and it looked great. All right, so this was boop. I literally just took somebody else's art, poorly photoshopped over the colors, and just literally found like a picture of a shirt and pants. Like those aren't drawings; those are just pictures that I took the background out on. And was like, "Can you make this look more like me, actually?" And she basically did a perfect job. My first flight since I was 4. That must have been pretty surreal, and hopefully not terrible, because I know that there's a lot of weird physical stuff that comes with flying, on top of just how you feel about it in general. I feel like since I was really young, I've always had like a weird soft spot for the idea of doing it, which, to be completely honest, I almost entirely blame on that one song from Sonic 2. It was like near the end of the game, the Sky Chase Zone, we were just like on a plane flying through the air. And it's just a really, really comfy, like, song that sounds really good for it. And I was like, wow, I want to do that sometime. But when I was growing up, for one reason or another, almost every single time that an excuse for flying came up, which was mostly like visiting my aunt that lived in California, I believe, there would just be like some money reason or something else that came up. Which is fine. I'm obviously not, like, upset with anybody about that, like my family or anything. It was just always poor timing that meant that I never ended up getting around to it. Flying is fascinating as BlazBlue, but it does real life horror at the same time. Yeah, it's always, like, the statistics things that I understand the reality of, but I also understand why it'd be really hard to actually think about that all the time when you're flying, where it's, like, more people, like, you know, die or get in dangerous situations in cars every year than they do flying, like by a pretty wide margin. But also you're a bazillion feet in the air, and it just feels wrong. Your body realizes that humans aren't supposed to do that. So I'm no furry, but tell me about this Makoto Nania. She is actually a character that I really, really like. Like, even, you know, for not Squirrel reasons, I promise. Much like many stories that end up dipping into there are animal people and there are different type of people, it ends up turning into like a halfway racism allegory, where she gets like bullied for it a lot in school and all that kind of stuff. But they essentially met just being very outcasted. Like, Noelle was just like a very shy person in school. Military school, I should say. I don't remember if I said that. And Makoto is very, like... Oh, thank you. Makoto is very, like, just hardened by, like, growing up the way that she did. And they kind of just, like, defended each other. Like, just because they were good at defending each other on those things, even if they were bad at defending themselves on those things. And, I don't know. I've always liked Makoto's, like, backstory generally as a character, and then beyond that, in like the greater BlazBlue story, her character is pretty much just that she's an extremely good friend. And I like characters that have that vibe to them, where you're just like, you are just here to be a good person to the people you want to be a good person to. And it feels very genuine throughout the entire story. And I like it. And I would probably be lying if I would say, because I originally did not have, like, a Squirrel Sona. But I'd be lying if it probably didn't influence in the grand scheme of things, the fact that I decided to make a Squirrel character. Not specifically to invoke her, but I just kind of like, I don't know, I like the natural colors, I like the vibe of, like, a squirrel as an animal. It's just, like, a very low-key animal all around. Low-key, cute, but also still has a big tail. That part's important. And I have had so many streams where I've been streaming this game, And people have been like, haha, why don't you play the Squirrel character? Not helped by the fact that she has a color that looks just like me. For the most part. It's honestly a little interesting how streaming has kind of affected my, like, headspace around gaming. It's never been something that's felt like a waste of time to me. Because ultimately I'm, like, getting a lot out of playing games when I play games. It's always been something I kind of go with the flow with, where, like, I never really thought too hard about when I want to play a game. It's just if I'm motivated, I'm motivated. If I'm not, I'm not. It's not like I've ever played something on stream that, like, I lacked motivation to play, but more so it's just interesting having structured gaming time. Because that's never really something I've done in my life. I guess in general, I've never been the type to make super strict schedules for, like, more personal things anyway. So it's definitely been part of what's made streaming really fun and interesting. I actually had kind of a funny moment somewhat recently where, like, I feel like for the most part, ever since, like, the internet took off the way it did and YouTube took off the way it did, there's really not, like, any games from my childhood that are, like, these, like, blind spots where I don't remember at least a lot of about the game, even if I don't remember the name. And even then, you know, you'll usually find a way to stumble across the name of the game again eventually. But there was one game that eluded me for an extremely long time until a YouTuber that I follow called NitroRad made a video on it, where my memory of the game was playing a PS1 demo disc. And it was a game that had, like, a really Halloween-y feel to it. Like, I was, like, my vague memory of it, because, again, it was when I was really young, was, like, I think you were, like, collecting pumpkins. It was, like, a courtyard thing. You kind of looked like this, like, ninja devil something character. And, like, for the longest time, I could not remember what that was. And eventually, that YouTuber covered it. And I found out that it was a game on PS1 called Jersey Devil. And it was, like, one of the last games that I've needed that kind of closure on. And as soon as I saw this, I was like, that's fucking it. I remember the fountain. I remember... Okay, maybe there's not pumpkins. Or maybe there is pumpkins. Oh, there is pumpkins. Yeah, pumpkins are a thing you can collect. Because I think the demo disc was probably just, like, the first, like, courtyard area. But, like, it was just, like, I don't even know if the game is good. I don't know if it's something I would ever care to go back to in my entire life. It was just, like, a memory of, like, a game from my childhood that haunted me. Because I just had no idea where it came from, and I had never heard anything about it again since. This I have a soft spot for, because they tried to cram Pac-Man onto a Game Boy Advance screen. So there's two ways to play it. One of them... Oh, looks like this. Which I think is, like, the smallest amount of pixels. Oh, I'll turn that down a little bit. I'm pretty sure that's, like, the smallest amount of pixels that you can still, like, consider Pac-Man. There's something, like, artistically interesting about how small this is. Like, minimum amount of pixels on the ghost on Pac-Man. The dots are actually a single pixel each. Their mouths aren't even wavy, they're just a few pixels, like, scattered. I don't know why. I just think there's something really charming about it. And it's that much more charming if you get the chance to see it on an actual Game Boy Advance screen. Because the Game Boy Advance screen is so small that they're, like, microscopic on the screen in a way that's, like, really silly. Take a bow! But the game never really ends. Someone somewhere is being chased. I thought I was gonna say, someone somewhere has a better score than you. Keep playing, beat them. I've played a little bit of Apex Legends, which I definitely had fun with. But it's what kind of made me realize that I'm not a big fan of the Battle Royale genre. For the most part. Because I was kind of like, if there's any game that's going to convince me on, like, because I was kind of keeping my distance from the Battle Royale formula, because I just kind of assumed that it wouldn't really end up being my style. And I kind of just kept arm's length from it, like I never played Fortnite, and still have not played Fortnite, and especially now, I don't think I will. But I played a decent amount of Apex, just kind of having fun with it. and kind of had the same issue that I always have with it with the Battle Royale games, which is that it just sucks to lose so much more than they are fun to play. Like, the actual, like, loot gathering and stuff like that isn't... It is fun, but then dying in, like, a split second because you didn't see somebody from around the corner feels bad enough that, like, I always feel like I almost literally just wasted 20 minutes, like, going around gathering stuff. And then I think the real kind of funny nail in the coffin for me with it was that I found out that they had the proper 3v3 versus mode and had so much more fun with that, then I was like, okay, I think I just like this kind of shooter more than I like the Battle Royale style loot gathering stuff. Seeing the tail pit, now I gotta share a clip of a German kids cartoon about a squirrel's tail. Well, now I'm curious. Been holding out on me. That sounds cute as heck.
Na ja, schon gut, hab verstanden. Siehst du, dass ich in das Dorf gehöre und nicht in den...
Oh. Oh, yes.
Unsinn. Warte, Puschel.
Hm?
Jetzt weiß ich, warum es nicht funktioniert hat.
Oh,
Zu einem
yes.
Schwanz kann man nicht fliegen.
Oh, the babies.
Die Haare sind schmutzig und kleben aneinander. Wer nicht einen Schwanz tragen soll, muss er sauber sein, damit er sich öffnet. Wir Eichhörnchen müssen unseren Schwanz immer sauber halten.
Got it. Oh. Oh, oh gosh. Oh, the babies. Oh. Where? Oh. Sure. I have no idea if that even came through on the mic. I feel like one kind of like interesting thing that I think about when it comes to like at least the original Banjo-Kazooie, not so much this game. I don't know how much of it is me just being nostalgic from when I was growing up with games and they were like a little bit more mysterious, or if it was a combination of that plus just like where the internet was at the time. But like something about Banjo-Kazooie specifically, and Banjo-Tooie and whatnot, were just such like weird, mysterious games in the way that they like presented themselves, where there was just like so many like hidden little things that you could find, like that were essentially weird Easter eggs hidden in the game's code because they were forward thinking with like connecting the first and the second game together. And there was like special codes that people found that you could put into like the sandcastle that would unlock these collectibles that like didn't matter at all. And it just felt like such like a this part of the game didn't exist and now suddenly it does because people dug deep enough. But it felt more like less like just finding beta content like buried away in a game, and felt a lot more just like because it was so much more fleshed out that it was so like amazing to find these weird little like things that were hidden in the game. So it just felt like this world where like there was just little things tucked away everywhere in a way that took an entire community to figure out in a really cool way. Another thing I can think of like that is the Game Boy Advance, or not Game Boy Advance, the DS Pokemon games like Diamond, Pearl, Platinum. I guess the Game Boy Advance ones too, but there was a lot more of them in the DS games where there was like a lot of special events and stuff that were reasonable to do because they were well, some of them were actual like real life events that you had to go to, and other ones were things that just actually were supposed to be that but never got added to the game, which were basically ways that you were going to get to like certain legendary Pokemon that you couldn't get to normally, like Darkrai, Arceus, stuff like that. And because, as a kid, I don't even know if I knew that the events were happening. So I only found out about them years later when I had an action replay, and it felt like this weird, cool thing where it was like all of this game content, like what would essentially just be DLC at most nowadays, or like a hidden event like that, or like a free update, and it's like, oh, whoa, cool new stuff. But back in the day, they just had to like hide it in the game's code, and if you couldn't have access to it because it was like an unfinished thing for the game, or something where technically you could have access to it, but only if you were there to like unlock, you know, again with Pokemon, it was like you went to like, you know, GameStop would hold an event for like a week where you could get the special item so you could get the thing in your game. And oops, you weren't there for it, that means you could never get it, except if you had an action replay. So it ended up feeling like this weird, cool, like, part of the game that I had to dig out myself. And it made it like weird and cool and special in that way. I feel like most people get their fix for that kind of stuff from like beta content hidden in games and like data mining and stuff. But there was just something about it that felt that much more intense back in the day. Because information just didn't flow quite as much. So when you found like the code for something like that, it was like, oh, what the fuck? It didn't help that a lot of them were really weird too. Like, let me see if I can find a picture of it. The one that always comes to my mind is that, like, for the Diamond and Pearl one, the route that you find Shaman on, when you, like, hack it into the, you know, you hack the thing that you need into the game with the special event. Yeah, that's what it's called, Sea Break Path. Where the map is literally just this. You just walk this for a while. And there is something very cool and surreal about having a game that you thought you like played inside and out and found all the secrets in, only to get an action replay, which felt like you were like hacking the mainframe, only to unlock a super weird area like that with dialogue and everything leading up to it, and then getting a legendary Pokemon that there's no way to get otherwise. With Banjo-Kazooie, it was like the stop and swap stuff, which, if you're not familiar with, was essentially the idea was that it would be like, there would be these hidden items that were in the first game, that originally how you were supposed to find out about them was that, you were supposed to find out about them in the second game. And I guess it was supposed to be exploiting a way that the N64 originally worked, where there was like a solid like 10 or 15 seconds where data would still be in the RAM of the N64 when you shut it off. So the idea would be like, you'd collect the items in Banjo-Kazooie, turn off the game and quickly switch it to Banjo-Tooie. And then like that data would still be there. So it would be like, oh, you collected the things in Banjo-Kazooie. But because they never implemented it, like they found out that they fixed that exploit like at the last second during development. So they didn't have time to take all the codes out or all the special areas out. So those are just still there. And they were just this weird big mystery in the community for the game for a while of like what the hell they were even there for. And because the codes were still there, you could still access them, and it just felt like this weird, like, again, especially in a collectathon type game, you explore these levels. And, oh, I didn't do this yet. I just unlocked it. But yeah, anyway, I don't know if that stuff was just more magical to me growing up because games were just weirder and I didn't know how they were made. Or if that is just kind of like a weird, cool thing that just kind of will never exist in gaming again. That I'm glad that I grew up with, because either way, it just made gaming like a lot more, at least with a couple games that meant a lot for me. It made them a lot cooler and more mysterious, and bigger than they were.